Welcome to Tom and Jack having the crack, a irreverent look at the week's news and politics. All right, mate. What's been on your radar? What's been going on?
Now, one of the things I saw recently that I found very interesting, that's not getting a lot of the airtime, is the amount of nurse vacancies in the NHS. Now, the last time I saw this, I remember a couple of years ago before the pandemic, it was about 10,000 or something like that. It could have been 10, 20,000. And I remember thinking that was pretty shocking. I've seen recently that it's 110,000 now.
Jeez.
That's the yeah.
Full-time vacancies.
Huh?
Full-time positions they need.
Well, it didn't say it, so maybe some of them are part-time, some of them are full-time, but like it's still a massive amount of vacancies within it. So, like I'm in pharmacy, there's a lot of vacancies in pharmacy too at the minute. Like I don't think it's as chronic as it is in nursing, but I think a few different things have happened. I think older people, the pandemic has burnt a lot of people out in health, massively burnt. I was talking to someone the other day, like for years in health, people are always trying to get you to work at 100%, go the extra yard, and really, if you were operating at 100%, which a lot of people in the NHS were prior to the pandemic, then you had to deal with that extra bit. My thing now, I wouldn't be saying it too publicly, but my thing now is always operate at 80%. You know what I mean?
Doesn't matter what job you're in.
You have to keep slack in the system. Like I remember the first lockdown, like I was working in pharmacy, I had 5 members of staff and I lost 4 of them in 24 hours. So I was lying in bed at 6 o'clock and I just got up and I just went to work because I was like, I better start doing something. And then I started, because I had 2 people who were going to have to do the work of 6 people. And then I started, I was so lucky. I was lucky because the schools and universities were closed. I had students who had worked very, very minutely from me in the past. I rang them up and I said, what are you doing? And they came and worked for me. So I think there's been a lot of early retirement. I think people who had a couple of years left to just thought, do you know what? The last few years are so tough. I'm going to retire early. I think there's been career changes. I think people have genuinely been burnt out, which is sad. Like I think people have and then I think clearly nobody is looking at health and thinking that's something I want to do. Now, I don't know if this is as much the case with nurses, but certainly with pharmacists, there's a bit of a truck driver thing here where, we've been listening for 10, 15 years about how we're going to be replaced by robots and AI. And everyone's sort of gone, okay, well, if we're going to be replaced, let's start moving into roles that aren't going to be robot and AI. And then the machines haven't come yet. And now the leaders are going to come back and say, oh, well, can you not come back and wait until we get the machines to replace you? And then you can So I honestly, I've been joking about it, but everyone knows, there's no appeal to being a nurse. Well, there's no, there is some appeal, but it just, the whole social contract there has to change.
You think it's a vocational position, isn't it? In a lot of ways, you're doing it because you want to help people. You're doing it because you feel like this is a worthwhile pursuit in life. And then there's also there's the economic job aspect to it as well. But like you say, if you take away someone's ability to do it because they're burnt out all the time and the feeling they're being appreciated for what they're doing, it's really hard to understand why more people want to go into it.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think the jobs like nursing has to do, and I think that there is an element of it. I know there's some kind of element of it, but they should be helping people out with housing.
They used to. They stopped.
I think there is a little bit of it. I think there is a little bit of subsidy there. But I think the trust, these hospital trusts, they've got loads of land. They should be building housing for their staff. And that would be a massive carrot to get people into it, because the other option, I suppose the Tory option, is you go to a poor country, show them videos of the opening ceremony of the Olympics and a couple of videos of the Queen and get them on a plane and bring them over. I think that's the Tory option, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Just very, very controlled immigration plan. Very, very controlled. Just for this postcode, this uniform, and that's fine.
It's not slavery.
It's not slavery. I don't know who mentioned that, but it's not that. In case anyone was, no, very different, because you will eventually get some money. It won't be enough to live necessarily, but there will be money in your bank account. Like I don't know what happened in Hackney, like where I live. There used to be a housing project that was like lovely, like semi-detached, like suburban houses, and they were all attached to Homerton Hospital. And then I remember a few years ago when my brother was looking around, one of them was available on the market, and I remember thinking like, oh, that makes me feel horrible. That obviously they're now publicly available just to buy.
Yeah. Well, everything is publicly available to buy. The housing, I think the whole Russian thing is interesting too with the housing. Because like they're not really going to do the sanctions the way they do the sanctions, but you start to realize how much illicit money has corrupted our property market.
It's propped it up. Like the whole, I was saying this to my sister, and she was like, really? I was like, yeah, like the whole premise of London property is a Russian oligarch or someone with a huge amount of money buys in like Belgravia or Sloane Square, and then it just gets a bit more expensive everywhere, and just ripples out across the city.
Yeah, completely.
And that's why property is priced the way. Same in New York, like that's why property is priced the way it's priced. It's not because there's some amazing natural phenomena happening in the city. It's like, no, if all these dudes buy up like this property, it means everyone else wants to be near it, so it gets more expensive to be near it. Simple as that.
I was saying last night, instead of sanctions on Russia, what we should do is flood their property market with illicit money, and then create unaffordable housing and create a generational divide in Russia, and just let them implode in a civil war.
Because Russians have never had to deal with poverty and inequality before. That's very foreign.
Well, no, the property thing, I suppose the property thing is different. But like it just looks like a complete game, like they've flooded it, they've artificially created the market, that created the divide. Then it's come out now that, there was a guy who infiltrated UKIP, there was a guy who infiltrated the Tory party, and they were both working towards Brexit. And one of the guys even tweeted that when Brexit happened, we won. So, they've created this divide, then they've capitalized it, they've moved Britain away from Europe. Now they've invaded a country in Europe. Yeah. And the whole thing they were hoping for, that they probably underestimated, is that there's been more of a united front than they were probably anticipating. But they were all strategic moves. But I think we're back in a serious Cold War era. I think the threat of serious war is going to be with us for a long time.
Do you see there's an Economist YouGov poll came out, I think, like 2 days ago, about people's willingness to fight?
Yeah.
So it was like, I think 50-60% of people were in favor of sanctioning Russia, with like 27% saying I don't know, and it was like 10% said it's not a good idea. But when it came to fighting, should we be fighting?
80%.
No, it was 16%.
16%.
Yeah, 1-6. Yeah.
Okay, that's good though. I think it's
good. But it was interesting because I've also seen a lot of comics posting clips about like, if I was conscripted, this is how I would get out of it. Like Chris Stefano, a big American comedian, had a big viral clip where it was like, I would instantly identify as a woman, 100% instantly. If like
Freddie Quinn did the same joke. I saw Freddie Quinn did the same joke.
Yeah. And I just go on.
But okay, look, so you're saying, okay, so Britain has a population of 60 million, right? So if 10%, say 10%, that's 6 million people. Mm-hmm. You only need 1 million people to fight, and we are all in, you don't need a lot of people to fight to absolutely bring everything down.
Oh no, of course not. But I think the interesting thing I thought was the general public attitude. I was thinking about previous, like World War II, for example. Because everyone talks about it as a world war, right? Rather than you're sort of talking about it more sensibly as like a Cold War style conflict where there's the threat
the threat.
Yeah, which is probably more true. But obviously in the media it gets portrayed as like World War III. And I was thinking about World War II and like how people's attitude to fighting was like, yeah, of course, like we're all gonna fight, we're all gonna go. And then, like,
I don't think it. I think there's a bit of whitewashing there, and there's a bit of rose-tinted glasses. I don't think people were ever. I don't think there was ever majority favor for wars, ever.
So you think that's a complete repainting of history?
Yeah, like because well, as I'm telling you, I've been reading this book about Napoleon recently, like, and it's just constant war. But the way people got the country to fight the war was by promising that this war will bring peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such a kind of paradox, but like the way that like people like Napoleon got their countries to back wars was by promising them that this would be the war that would finally bring peace. And I've no doubt that during World War II, that there was plenty of people who were like, in little towns and villages going, let's not fight this war. Like, Johnny, don't go off, like, don't be going.
The way I've always understood it, like the way it worked for my granddad was, it was kind of a two-pronged thing of massive social pressure, peer pressure, because there wasn't anything else. We have so many more. It's funny because I think I was drawing a parallel in my head to the way we've all, not all, but the way the Western world thought about COVID, for example. I think it's quite a lot of similarity in that when in the 1940s or like pre-World War I, like, in the teens, I just don't think you thought of your life as precious. You didn't have all these expectations for your life. You didn't have all these thoughts about like what your life could be and all these aspirations.
No. Yeah, there was none of that.
It was much more like, well, what else are you gonna do? Like what? Like we're all gonna go fight, and you're gonna be the one who stays at home. And like, what else are you doing when you're here?
You did what you had to do. Well, like Ireland's a good example. World War One, 200,000 Irishmen fought for the British Army during World War One at a time when there was British occupation in Ireland, and the majority of those men would have hated the British Army, and loads of them are on and some of them came back and fought against the British Army afterwards. But they did it because it was the only reliable source of income. You got well paid to be in the army. They didn't have any options, and it was basically that was how they fed their family. So
pre-penicillin, pre-antibiotics, there was so many. Life was so much more dangerous and so much more fragile that the prospect of fighting in a war, I think, was the gap between regular life and fighting in a war was probably.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, and sometimes.
Whereas now we're
we're so fed.
now. Yeah, we're so comfortable now that the gap between my life and a war is so stark compared to what it would have been for our grandparents.
But there's still plenty of people who there's still plenty of young people who would love to fight a war, like they love the idea, they buy into the whole romanticism of it. They're alpha males. They like fighting. There's plenty of people who like fighting.
Imagine
there's plenty of people.
Imagine if that was like a cabinet meeting. Like, I don't know. I think there's plenty of people who like fighting. I think we can go to some of these towns.
I definitely think there is. I think that the war in Ukraine is really interesting because I've seen a few kind of opinion pieces of retired British soldiers who are going off to Ukraine to fight. The government had to say, listen, if you're in the British Army and you go to Ukraine to fight, you'll be court-martialed. We don't want you doing that. And I think what's quite interesting is I knew people who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they joined when they were first going off to fight. They said they were looking, they had joined the army because they wanted to fight wars. Now, one of the difficulties there was there was that sort of cognitive dissonance where they're like, should we be fighting this war? But I think if you were the type of person who grew up wanting to fight a war, to fight Putin is a much nicer experience for yourself internally than to have gone to Afghanistan or Iraq, where you're then kind of wondering, oh, are we really, because you were told you were going over to be a liberator, and then you're getting there and you're like, no one's acting, they did for a little while, but now they don't want us here. And you're a bit confused. Whereas I think if you were in Ukraine fighting Putin, you'd be like, they do want us here fighting. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'd feel a lot better about it. If I was someone who wanted to fight a war, I'd feel a lot better about it. But
Go ahead.
But the reason I think I think China's just in the background here from the whole thing, and that's why I think I just think we are in. I think we're in a couple of decades of China trying to become top dog.
Did you see that they've recently pulled back? So there was a period of Chinese expansion where they welcomed Google, welcomed Facebook, welcomed any Western company that wanted to trade in China because it inflated their economy. And they started to, and I think the narrative sort of from 2010 to 2020 was like, China is more or less wedded now to Western economies because they need our products and services, yada, yada, yada. And I think in the last like 4 or 5 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, they've started to ban American technology companies. They've also limited their own technology companies. So I think they've seen like how big Facebook and Google got in the US. And then that's why Jack Ma from Alibaba has been like, put in a dark room for a little while. So like, you're not going to be bigger than the state. That is not our 25-year plan. Basically, they're like, our 25-year plan is not for our economy to be the be all and end all. And whatever it takes to grow that is what we'll do. We have a much bigger, more thorough worldview on where China needs to be. And you're going to stay in your little box and you're going to contribute to what the party needs.
Yeah, the party comes first. They say that the guy now, Z or whatever his name is the most powerful guy since
Xi Jinping.
Is that his name? Xi Jinping. He's the most powerful guy since Chairman Mao. So the whole thing has been restructured, and that openness towards the West is now closing off. Look at it. I don't want to be too cynical about it, but it was probably a case that we'll get them in, we'll learn how to do all their stuff, and then we'll get rid of them.
Because why wouldn't you? If you're from their perspective, if you're trying to win on their team, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that?
And they're the people who've been in China now say they are and have created this super surveillance state that just we have never seen the likes of it before, and it is very, very different to how we are living. They have turned very much away from us.
And I don't think that's talked about enough. I think you're absolutely right that they've picked a different path, and you wonder sometimes if Western governments, in order to compete with China long term, it's going to be a very interesting choice. Because do you become a bit more like them? If you're like, oh, the only way we can compete is if we have a similar level of control over our populace, or do you try and fight it by going the opposite way? And that's going to be a huge.
It'll be a real clash of values. I don't think we'll go their way. I think there'll be incredible resistance here to a surveillance state.
You say that. I mean, people were very. I know it was a global health, huge global health issue, but the readiness with which people have given up rights during.
Yeah, but I don't like there is that paranoia there. The other side of it too is, as someone who's met like leaders in the West, I don't think they want it. I don't think the leaders want it. I don't think I don't think our leaders are that way of kind. Like any high-end politicians I've ever met, they wouldn't want to live in a society like that. They wouldn't want to. Do you know what I mean? They're not. I don't think they're. I don't think it's. Like, I do think, we do have some values. I do think we do have some values.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's hard sometimes because you think if you pushed it all the way to the end game, would they just do would a Western politician just do what was ever most expedient? I sometimes wonder. I said they wouldn't do it all at once. I don't think it wouldn't be like they make a.
Oh no, it'd be incremental. Yeah.
And you wonder if how can they ever get out of this cycle of pandering or short-term fixes and that cycle? It's not a conscious thing, just that cycle of short-term fixes lead you down a garden path where you look back and you're like, how the fuck did we end up with ID cards? And it was because people were saying you need to be able to identify people who commit hate speech, and if we can't stop these people in the street you wonder if little things lead you down a path you don't want to be.
Yeah, it can happen. Well, it's the whole frog in the boiling water, isn't it? It can happen incrementally, and you don't realize you're being boiled. And there's look at, I think a lot of time in the past, a lot of good social progress in countries in the past happened because of enemies. So like, a lot of times, populations got well educated and well looked after because we had an enemy that we were like, okay, we need healthy, educated people, and maybe that with China thing, we might start looking after ourselves and looking after our economies a bit better, and maybe we might start doubling down a little bit more on what our true values are, rather
what
than
our best things are. Yeah, that's a great point.
An ad hoc sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than like futzing around the edges of like, what do they need? What do they need? You just double down on the things that make Western civilizations interesting, attractive, fun places to be, useful places, powerful places to be. Like, I guess like America, look at America during the Cold War, like during the 80s and 90s, was like the most dominant cultural force in the world.
Oh, huge. Yeah. Everyone was in love with America then.
Yeah. And it was, and I think like to your point, they really, now it could express itself in some ugly ways, but I guess like chanting like USA at the Olympics, and that becoming like a thing after the 84 Olympics, and just being like you said, America being super attractive to the rest of the world and exporting this one thing they had, which was freedom. Now you can obviously decide, how free are Americans and how useful is freedom, etc. But it was a very attractive product to ship around the world.
And there was
against Russia, like to your point, like
there was one time when ordinary workers in America were better treated than anywhere else in the world. Like there's a reason Irish people aren't idiots. Like there was a reason all the Irish people were flying over to America. It was because you went over, you got a normal enough job, and you got well paid, and you could own a house, and you could have a family, and there was a time when it was a good place to go and make a good living. Like,
and you wonder if as Western economies, we just get back to thinking about that, and that's our actual best defense against someone like China, is to make our countries super attractive again,
make them better again. And
don't say great.
Here we go. He's got me. I don't know how he did it. He flipped me.
Little hat comes off camera.
You said about that athlete who chose China over America, like that stuff, that like these kind of things that can make the difference, I'll tell you an interesting one though. Do you know like this, one of the big problems in America is you have this massive disparity between what CEOs earn and what normal workers own, right?
Yeah.
Do you know who it's an Irish guy who kind of started that?
No.
This guy called, he's still alive, right? This guy called Tony O'Reilly. He played rugby for Ireland, he played rugby for the Lions. Interesting fact about him, he played more games and scored more tries for the Lions than he did for Ireland. I think he only ever had one cap for Ireland, which is quite a bizarre kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he was an incredibly suave, sort of impressive guy. Like I said, he was a brilliant after-dinner speaker. But he became the CEO of Heinz, like Heinz beans, Heinz ketchup and all that. I think he was the first non-family member to become. And he was so, they were so in awe of him, the family, that they sort of allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And he had companies in Britain and Ireland. So he owned Waterford Crystal, he owned Wedgwood. Is that, like the kind of China?
Yeah.
He owned Wedgwood. He owned Independent. He had a newspaper thing. So he had all these different companies that normally CEOs wouldn't be allowed to own different companies, but they let him own different companies. And because his companies were always sort of struggling, they always needed injections of cash. He kept upping his CEO pay so he would have money to pump into these companies. And then I think a lot of other CEOs saw that he got away with it, and then they all started doing it.
No way, really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Ireland's first-born billionaire, and Irish people causing all the trouble. You know what I mean? Like,
It's going to.
That's true. Like he was the first guy to start to really inflate
Yeah,
his
right.
CEO earnings, and it was because he was like, I need £1 million put into our the company's gone bust, and he was just in survival mode with all these companies for a long time, and in the end, all his companies went bust. Like,
so he had a nice. He's just basically going down a roller coaster of a career, just like wee. Like,
yeah.
crap.
So he just brought everyone down with him, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So in the end, everyone was equal.
A great after dinner speaker.
Say what you will about Tony, he can spin a yarn. Can't manage a balance sheet, but he can spin a yarn.
Seemingly one of his famous reoccurring jokes was he used to always say that whenever Rupert Murdoch was at an event that he was at, because he had a bit of rivalry with Rupert Murdoch, he used to say that someday he would have as much money in his bank account. His dream in life was to have as much money as Rupert Murdoch owes. Yeah, that used to be his joke. But to be fair, I think Rupert got the last laugh on that one.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think he's still going, isn't he, Rupert Murdoch?
Oh yeah. He's out survived a lot of people. Like, you know, obviously Robert Max was the other one. Like,
yeah.
Disaster.
Murdoch's one of those fellas that makes you believe in like drinking of baby blood and like adrenochrome. Like, you know what I mean? If you found out like he was injecting himself with some experimental serums derived from endangered.
I don't see that. You know, his thing was his dad had a media company,
right?
A small media company, now regional, but like still, you know, good money. Like for people like us, good money, you know. But I think his dad died, and I think the story goes that the board, Rupert should have inherited his dad's shares, and the board screwed Rupert, so he got screwed out of his dad's. You know, so he got screwed out of what rightfully his, and I think that kind of then set his mindset, you know. So then there's sort of that, and I think that makes him make sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
that permanent, you got a permanent chip on your shoulder.
The chip on the shoulder. He's been fucked over. He's a young man. He's sort of going to have this attitude. No one's ever going to fuck me over again. Do you know what I mean? So I think that, and that's usually how these kind of things happen, you know?
Like when I was
Conor McGregor, he had the thing where he was bullied in school and he brought a crowbar to school to defend himself, and then he got suspended from school. So he said that's when he decides to become a fucking monster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, you know, it's that whole thing like, you know, diamonds are created under pressure. So it's some event has triggered this, you know, kind of thing in them, you know?
Yeah, and I think to be a CEO of anything, you have to be a little bit of a psychopath.
Oh, yeah, or something. Some event.
I think like you have to have something has to have pushed you to the point where your empathy decreases, because to make the kind of decisions they have to make, you can't actually weigh up all the risks and balances, really. Because it's too much to consider, too much to think about. You just have to like have a vision and chutzpah to execute on
and it probably gets easier. I'd say that, but from a psychological point of view, you're making inhumane decisions. You know, the first one is like, oh God, you know, I fired one person. You're like, oh Jesus, like. Yeah. Then 2 years later, you're like, 10,000. You know what I mean?
I'd love it if that was the advice. Or maybe that's what Tony O'Reilly was saying in his after dinner speeches. If you need to make inhumane decisions, just make a lot of them. Just make a lot of them.
Well, I very much buy into that. I think no matter what you do, I think, well, there's that whole thing. Once you do something once, you're twice as likely to do it again. So once you kill once, you're now way more likely to kill again than someone who's never killed.
And better at it.
Maybe better at it, yeah. But I saw that thing though before, like, you know, a huge percentage of successful people have had an unhappy childhood. Like that the drive to become success, like it has to come. It kind of has to come from someplace, you know. So, and like if you've had a really charmed upbringing. Like, where's the drive?
Well, I think they're the ones you have to really watch out for. I think the people who've had a happy childhood or a happy upbringing and still have that maniacal fury to succeed.
Oh, well, they're the psychopaths. So that's Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because they're then doing it for vanity rather than, I suppose, like a lot of people will do it for, there might have been some kind of instability or insecurity. So they're looking for stability, security that's ever elusive. Nothing's ever enough. So there's a bit more of a logic to that rather than someone who's just the narcissist, vain person.
Yeah. So one of the companies I used to do advertising for was Anheuser-Busch, that big beer conglomerate.
Budweiser.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So Budweiser is their big brand, but the company's much bigger than Budweiser now because they got bought by a Brazilian conglomerate, like a Brazilian banking team. And it was 4 guys, all of whom grew up in the favelas of Rio.
Wow.
All of whom were self-made millionaires, right? Just these guys all have pots of money that like their wives don't have access to, just the other 4 guys have access to. And it's like quasi-mafia shit. And they had built up this brewery empire in South America because they're basically a mergers and acquisitions team that just happened to merge and acquire breweries. And ruthless. And they flew to America to see Budweiser. And it's August Busch III, family-run company, right? For like 150 years. They fly in there and like, we want to buy your brewery. And August Busch III gives them a tour. And he's like, I just wanted to show you around the company you'd never own. Go fuck yourself. Like, this is an American company. Like, piss off back to Brazil. These 4 lads then set about contacting every single significant shareholder in Anheuser-Busch and being like, this is the remuneration package we're willing to offer you if you let us buy the company.
Yeah. They
bought some shares. They attend the next shareholders meeting. They call for a vote of no confidence on August Busch III, who's like, what? This is my company. My name's on the fucking building. Like, what are you talking about? And all the shareholders were like, yeah, no confidence. And they kicked him out of his own company and just took over one of the most iconic institutions in America, just through sheer bloody mindedness of, this is what we do. We merge and acquire companies. It don't fucking matter how big you are. We're tougher than you. Most ruthless thing I'd ever like been, in terms of like proximity to it, most ruthless thing I'd ever like encountered or seen or been around. It was wild. What is wild to like see happening.
Yeah, that's mad. Like that's proper hostile take it. Well, I guess this with Russia's move here now, there'll be a bit more. I don't know full details, but I think France and Germany have always been a bit more protective of who can take over certain companies, whereas Britain has been just like, we'll sell you fucking MI5. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got, there's been no. Whereas I think France and Germany have a thing where if the company is of strategic importance, which is a very broad term,
and can be defined by each government. I would imagine each government.
You can't own. There's certain companies that cannot be sold outside. And you see it now with the Dubai P&O ferries,
right?
Owned by a crowd in Dubai. Have you seen this?
No.
Where they've just fired 800 staff. Just fired them.
Wow.
And they have agency staff ready to come in and take their jobs.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's funny. I saw like a BBC story or something about oligarch money in London, like dirty money in London, and the number of people who are just like, I think it's absolutely shocking. I had no idea this was happening. While they're like lighting their cigar with like £50 notes. Like these things don't happen by accident, do they? Like, they don't happen without anyone knowing. Like when you sell P&O cruises to a Dubai conglomerate, you know to some extent what you're giving up. Like, what you're.
Yeah, well, there's the book Moneyland, and which is all about offshore accounting and all this and money laundering and everything. And he says when you do the index of the most corrupt countries in the world, like Russia will come up high and everything, but he says, which is a fair argument, he says the lawyers, the accountants, and the financiers who make it all possible are all in Britain and America.
Yeah, of course.
So he argues that Britain and America are the corrupt ones, because without that army of professional, respectable people, it couldn't happen.
Oh, of course. And that's where, back to your earlier point about China, that's where you would think if they had a bullseye of what the weaknesses of, let's just say, Britain and America, it's greed. It's
greed, openness, greed. Yeah. The freedom.
Because we are willing to sell off Budweiser to anybody, or we are willing to take a lawyer's fee to broker any deal with anyone.
Any deal. Yeah. That's what they say. They say they're actively exploiting weaknesses in other countries. I don't know if it's true. I heard that they really try to probe race in America. They see race as America's Achilles heel.
Yeah, it's like a fault line. You can split the country.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they see. But they definitely see our freedom of expression as a weakness. So they're infiltrating our media.
Because if you think about it, before social media, that it wouldn't have been as much of a weakness, because yes, everyone has an opinion, but not everyone could publish it, and therefore not everyone could read it, which means therefore you couldn't build consensus as quickly. Whereas now I think you can, if you were, well, it's been proven, hasn't it, that foreign entities are constantly trying to do this. The reason it's so effective, I think, is because you can surface like 1 million people who feel the same as you, which gives it a sense of truth, gives it a sense of veracity that it wouldn't have had if you could, because you would never been allowed on TV, you would never been allowed in a newspaper with that opinion.
Yeah, there was more gatekeepers. Now I got a good one for you, right? So RT has lost its British broadcasting license. You see that? Russia Today.
Wow.
Just during the week. But a couple of years ago, they were on about making comedy shows, and there was a lot of comedians applying and jockeying for things. So, like, I put it to you now, Tom. RT comes along and says, we got a Saturday night show. we want to give you your own kind of Live at the Apollo show. Like, that's, and I think we all have been kind of conditioned a little bit a few years ago that, take any opportunity you get. No one was even questioning, like, if you said to people, I don't think you should do something for RT, it's a propaganda channel of a rogue state. I think comedians would be like,
what's the
people be like, you're just jealous. People are like, you're just jealous.
Exactly. You're just hating on me. They haven't got the opportunity.
Haters gonna hate, people be
do you think that in comedy, like a few years ago, or in any form of entertainment a few years ago, people would have been genuinely like, yeah, you just got to take the opportunities where they come, whereas now you don't think that?
Well, no, absolutely, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the war changes. I read a thing years ago which was saying that, like, China was going to places like South America, and it was going to, like, the BBC correspondent in, say, Argentina, and going, listen, how much there's cutbacks in the BBC. You don't have much of a budget. How much you're getting paid? Come work for us. We'll give you 3 times your wage. You have a double the budget. Same job. You won't have to do anything differently. And what they say is that the Chinese state wouldn't directly interfere with you editorially, but you kind of knew there was things that you couldn't really say. So in that sense, there was psychological manipulation, and they're causing you to self-censor. But I think the day before the Ukrainian war, there would very much have been an attitude that you take every opportunity you get. And I think if you had gone on a comedy forum and called people out who took money from Russia, Saudi Arabia, it doesn't matter who, to perform there, you'd be seen as someone who had sour grapes, was a bit bitter, and was just envious or jealous that you didn't get the opportunity. That might change.
So that's what I find interesting. I relatively recently, I was on a show with a couple of people who were sort of saying something very similar to what you just said. And I was saying, but like, in America, for example, like a lot of comics go on Fox News, a lot, because They can say wild things that they want to say. They get paid. I'm talking panel. They do like, guest, they'll do a spot on a show. Just to say, like Tim Dillon used to do it all the time before he got really famous. Because it was a fun way of getting paid to say wild stuff. And they're like, I would never, ever do that. And I was thinking like, well, why not? Why is it as an entertainer, why is it your responsibility to stand in for the morality of any given medium that you're working through? It's like, I don't agree with what a lot of Facebook and Instagram does, but I'm posting my clips. So like, where's the objective? I think there's a line that makes people feel cozy and comfy and morally correct, but I don't think it's a very strong intellectual argument for why one's better than the other.
Well, that's why we are the decadent West, Tom, and that's why the rest of the world thinks that we have no morals or ethics anymore, and we just take the money and we don't care who we do business with, and that's kind of how we got into this mess in the first place. I think now this could be a generalization. I think there's certain parts. I think other parts of Europe. And I think I'm thinking Eastern Europe, and I think maybe French, German are a little bit better at this than us.
Yeah.
Because you're going on Fox News, but you are feeding the beast. Like you going on it is helping them in some way. Like obviously one comedian. Saying, I'm not going to go on Fox News because I don't believe in what you did, and I think what you've done to my country is terrible, isn't going to make a difference. But if all comedians started rounding that thing, then it can make a difference, It
can, and I'd be fine with it, provided they also had the same feelings about TikTok, and provided they also had the same. Do you know what I mean? Like, provided they interrogate, like if their stance is, I will not give any credence to people doing morally questionable things, then I just think you got to keep the same energy.
Yeah, and then it becomes, well, you can't go media then at all because there's no.
That's what I mean, and also I'm fine with someone saying, I don't know, just don't like them very much, and that's fine. But just, I guess where I get slightly like is when you try and dress it up in this pseudo intellectual argument about morality. It's like, it's not that. You just don't want to be part of that team. And that's fine. That is completely fine. That's a legit thing. No worries. I wouldn't push back or like ask you to explain that any further. Just don't tell me it's a moral thing when you're very willing to do other things that you could point the same accusation at.
Yeah, well, I come back in you there because like humans are complex and they're multifaceted. And I think if you hold people too much to, you don't do that, then you shouldn't do that, then you're kind of creating you're kind of basically saying to everyone that you can either be an angel or a devil. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, if I do a lot of bad things, but I don't do other things because I think they'd be bad, isn't it better that someone only does some bad things than all bad things? Like, what do you like?
No,
if you start putting people under pressure that like, you're either an angel or a devil. You either do good things or you do bad things. If you're not going to do that thing because you think it's bad, then you shouldn't do anything that's bad. Then you're either saying to people, become an impossible human being or just do all the bad things. That's capitalism. That is the complete brain thing that we all got into. Like, we hate people who are inconsistent and everything and hypocritical, but actually, everything would be better if we were all a bit more inconsistent and hypocritical. And
I'm fine with I'm on board with the inconsistency and hypocrisy because it's like you say, we all do it. And all I'm saying is just be honest about it. So I'm saying rather than pretending you're an angel, rather than pretending you're more virtuous, pretending you have some sort of moral.
Don't be. Yeah, you don't need to virtue signal about. Like, you don't have. If you turn down Saudi Arabia, you don't have to fucking tell people about it.
Yeah, exactly. So just own it. Just be like, I don't want to go on Fox News. That's not part of my team.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do that. But I'm not a better person because I'm pumping TikTok.
I had it a little bit with TikTok because I was on TikTok. I'm on TikTok, and I still post things on TikTok. I might post this little clip now on TikTok, but I did I played around a lot, and I purposely did divisive clips about Brexit stories, purposely, and they went really well for me, and it was the only thing I ever did that went well, that got me lots and lots of views. And then I started to feel a little uncomfortable at the idea that I genuinely thought the Chinese state is promoting me to be divisive. And I was like, I didn't get into comedy because I wanted to be divisive. I got into comedy because I wanted to make people laugh. And if anything, I want to be able to bring people together through laughter. And I was just like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I'd love to be a full-time paid comedian, but I don't want to be one that's creating more division.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting thing that's happening.
But I'm still a very bad man, Tom, I have to admit.
Yeah. just to clarify, I'm a horrific human being.
Don't get the wrong idea.
Yeah. I wish we could all start from that point. I wish we could all start from the point of like, yeah, no, I ain't shit. I'm not, I've got flaws. I've got huge, gaping, giant, chasm-like flaws, and that's fine. And so have you, and so have you, and so have you. And we can all proceed on that basis that none of us hit the mark of where we want to be morally. But it's interesting when you see, because to find a niche now, like there's a number of, do we call them right-wing comedians? I don't know, people who are maybe just not in the super sort of left-wing orthodoxy, maybe is more fair, but people have like consciously just tried to find a niche, haven't they? Just like, that audience isn't very well served, I'm going to go over there.
Yeah,
there's opportunity over there.
Yeah, there's lots of that. And do you know what it's like? It's like when a footballer goes to play football in America or China. You're successful, you're getting well paid, but no one fucking respects you. Do you know what I mean? Play with the big boys. Do you know what I mean? Like, fucking put in the training, put in the work, and try playing the Premier League, the Champions League, where it counts. Fuck off with your Shanghai fucking United or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's great. Perfect. Nailed it. Perfect analogy. Perfect analogy. Well, there was another story you brought up, which I didn't really know much about, which might be worth having a chat about. The it's been a
the Iranian one. The Iranian story is brilliant. Well, I know. Actually, I need to retract that. It's horrific. For the people involved, like horrific, and they were like, Jesus Christ, I don't know about you, like sometimes I go to work as a pharmacist and I feel like I'm a pawn in a game played by the pharmaceutical industry, right? But Jesus Christ, these people were absolute pawns in a game of power between two fucking ruthless countries. But the bit I find absolutely incredible is the money that Britain owed Iran. Do you know the story of the money Britain owed Iran?
500 million.
The army, they were selling army tanks to the Shah
to
help, and the idea was he was buying these army tanks to help protect himself, and Britain didn't make them quick enough, so the Shah got boosted out, but they had still 400 million worth of tanks that hadn't delivered. Then Khomeini gets in, Islam religious state. So Britain's like, not giving you the tanks. Right? And then they're like, we're not giving you your money back either. And then they ended up. Then there was sanctions against Iran. So then there was difficult. Britain then then for a long time Britain was refusing to give the money back. And then Iran got a ruling in The Hague International Court to say that the money should be given back, that it's rightfully Iran's money. And then Britain had a tricky issue where they couldn't give it back because it would be in breach of sanctions that were imposed on Iran. So in the end, they used this woman, they held her hostage, and I think they're looking for $6 billion of America. They still have American. Yeah. I'll tell you an interesting one. When you're a kid and you're watching the news, Ireland had a few guys over the years who were held hostage in places
Yeah.
for a long time, and and then they get released and they'd be on the telly and they'd be like heroes, and they'd give a bit of a speech, and everyone be clapping and cheering them on. When you're a kid, like your ego, you're like, you want to be a hero, you want to be a star. Everyone wants to be a star, wants to be a hero, wants to be loved and revered, and you're always trying to look, oh, what is the thing I used to always think I could be a hostage. Do you know what I mean? I don't have the talent to be a sports star. Do you know what I mean? I can't sing, but I could sit in a prison for 6 years and come out a hero. It's amazing how fucked up your child mind is. You're like,
well, there's a lot in that statement. There's a lot. So the first thing you said was like, everyone wants to be a star, everyone wants to be revered. And I was like, that's the most comic thing you've said on the pod.
That's human nature. That's not.
You think? I'm not sure everyone does want to be a star.
Oh yes. Oh fucking yes.
Everyone wants to be a star.
Everyone. Like the desire to be a winner and to have status and to exist somewhere, like, it's in everybody. Like it's definitely it's a primal thing that exists in every, like, you know what I mean? I think you got your chimpanzees or whatever, and they've got the alpha male, and I think it's just in us. Now I think it's in us to different degrees, and I think people learn how to manage it better than other people. And I do think, I think the more civilized you become, the less you have it in you. So I do think as people get older, they have it less. I think teenagers probably have it the worst.
I agree. People want. I agree. There's a constant battle for status because it's linked to a battle for resource. I completely agree with that. But the idea that everyone wants to be a star, it's just a way
No, everyone's got an ego. Everyone wants to be a star. Everyone wants to be revered. Look at it. It's the old Oscar Wilde thing. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. Yeah. Everybody fucking wants it too. And teenagers, absolutely. Everyone has it as a teenager, Like I think the percentage of people who have absolutely none of this in them is small.
So being a hostage, that was like the pre-sex tape way of getting famous.
Yeah, well, that was just, you didn't need any real talent. You just had to endure,
That's like a sex tape.
Like a sex tape, yeah, and you get a book deal for a couple of million, so you're financially set up for life. Now, as I get older, I did realize the psychological scars mightn't be worth the money,
Like a sex tape.
Like a sex tape. Well, I suppose, yeah, like a sex tape, yeah.
Did you see Kim Kardashian during this week said her advice for women who want to get ahead in business was just to get off their ass and work?
Oh yeah, and the sex tape made her famous, was it?
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, of all the people in culture who've given people the concept that you don't have to work that hard to become super famous, it's you.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you're the don't get me wrong, I know that to produce shows and create makeup, I know there's a tremendous amount of work once you get to that stage. Of course there is. But the perception you've given people is that just being ridiculously attractive and saying kind of silly things like she controls the edit of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, or like her and her family do. So they consciously choose to leave things in that make her sound a bit silly.
And listen, I watch the Kardashians when I'm hungover. I like it when I'm hungover, and it's not fucking work. They go for dinner. Like, I can tell you, every Kardashian fucking show, there'll be a business meeting. There'll be a lot of phone calls. Then they go for lunch. There'll be a bit of drama discussed. Just fucking eating and drinking. Go to restaurants.
So, and whether or not that's true, that's the projection you've chosen to give the world.
Yeah.
So when you're getting on your moral high horse about women in business want to succeed, they need to work, you probably need to bring a bit more of a caveat to or a bit more self-awareness maybe to like how you got to where you got to.
Yeah, but I think all successful people have it. There's a thing in psychology that all successful people believe in their narrative, believe in their story, and they don't believe it's luck.
Of course not.
They do genuinely believe it was hard work because they don't see the luck. You know, there's so many flicks of the coins along the way. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Sport is a big one. Sport is a big one because every great sports guy, every single one of them, like they could so easily have had an injury that wipes them out at any time.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and there's plenty of sports stars that did get that injury. But everyone like Messi, Ronaldo, Michael Jordan, every single one of them, they could have had at any point
Yeah.
an unlucky injury and they're finished.
Exactly. There's like, that's sort of principle of the book Outliers, isn't it? That like you have to factor in how many layers in which you're lucky. Like you're lucky, you're lucky to be born at a certain time where there's requisite nutrition that your physical gifts can flourish. That's number one. You're lucky to be born in a place where that sport gets played. Number two, you're lucky to be played at a time. You're lucky to be in a time where that sport gets played. Like you go down the list, right all the way to, and you didn't get an injury.
And you didn't get it. The time of year you're born has an effect because of the way the age is. Yeah, there's so many factors to it. Yeah, multifaceted. But it's just, Molly, look at, I think, you know, rich and famous people will always be saying this kind of shit. That like, and they will though. They'll always be saying this kind of shit. Like the truth of it is, it's our fault for over idolizing.
Yeah,
like, and certainly from a government point of view, like we over idolize them, like we do revere them. We don't go like, oh, look at that person, they're lucky. Like, you know, we do absolutely.
Well, have you seen, just linking that point to the one we were talking about with TikTok earlier, you know, in China, the things that get promoted on TikTok are like civil engineering and kids who've made like robots and kids who've like won national math competitions and stuff. They're the things.
Anything that helps the army.
Basically. The eventual war, which is 6 months down the line. But it's interesting, like to your point earlier about like what TikTok's showing, like it's so fascinating that on a very simple level, in America and Europe, TikTok surfaces dance routines and emotional confessions, and like they're the things that, divisive content, that's what goes viral in Western countries. In China, they skew the algorithm so that it's more socially beneficial stuff, because that's what they want their children to be seeing. That like Western kids can see that stuff. We want our kids to be seeing much more useful things, because we don't want to be in a situation where we're overly idolizing a TikToker or a YouTuber or a Kim Kardashian.
Well, that's what they're doing with their surveillance state. It is like Black Mirror stuff in that they are creating a system where everything you do is being analyzed, recorded, and assessed and graded. And the better you behave as a citizen, the more opportunities will be presented to you. Yeah, it's like.
Do you think the only parallel we've had in Western culture is like during the super religious periods of our societies, where you had to, you know, fealty to the Catholic Church or fealty to the Church of England?
That was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
And like,
do you know when religion really took off in Ireland after the famine?
Of course, I didn't know that.
That's when Irish people became really religious. Like it was because the church would look after you.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, which I guess would have been the reason why it was so popular through most of history, which was it's the one element of your life that if you behave in a certain way, you can expect some very tangible alms.
Yeah. They look after the poor. Also, like there would have been people for work and everything. People be asking what religion you are.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, it's very much. Yeah, but it does affect creativity. I know you're saying about people in America. I think you should just let the stupid people run off and fucking. Do you know what I mean? They're just
not in any particular direction. Just run. Just go.
Just fucking run off. Just get in your way, don't you? They hold you back. Now I'll tell you what's interesting too. You know, China's having problems with COVID again.
Yeah, saw that. Yeah,
and it's because their vaccine wasn't that good. And they
No,
wouldn't
really?
they wouldn't they used old technology in the vaccine, insisted on using their own vaccine, and it wasn't as effective. I think they had poor take up on it too. So
That's
we
interesting.
could.
I would have thought they'd have had just like 100%. I would have thought their compliance would have been 100%. I thought it would have just been
No,
like,
I don't think it was great. I don't think it was. So like keep the people singing and dancing, because like the guy's smart enough to do the kind of vaccines. If everybody's been pushed into the lab and the fuckers doing the singing and dancing are in the lab, they'll drive the smart people fucking crazy, and then they won't invent anything good. You know what I mean? You have to protect. You have to distract everybody to keep them away from the smart people.
that's so funny. I thought
get on with doing shit,
I thought what you were gonna say was keep them singing and dancing because that improves creativity and that's how you get our mRNA.
Keep them the fuck away. Do you ever meet a smart person? Like, they have no tolerance for stupidity. Like, keep the stupid people distracted.
It's like meeting a different species, isn't it? Like when you speak to someone who's like properly clever, especially in science, and they can't understand you. They're just like, what? Like, you little chimp, man? Like, what are you? Like, what are you all about?
On my course, there's some of the lecturers and academics, fucking smart people, like, and obviously they're marking your grades, and there'd be a lot of coursework and stuff. And there'd be always some students who would try to do a bit of schmoozing, you know what I mean, to help improve their grades, and it would be shot down so fucking quick. It's unbelievable. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've seen a guy, he's been kind of chatted up and the whole lot, walk to a lift and then say to the student, you get that lift, I'll get the next one. Because he does not want to be fucking talked to about trivial shit at all. He's like, you get in the fucking lift, I get the next one. Because he's like, he wants to think about the problems he's solving and all that kind of stuff.
And that's just like a metaphor for their existence. Like, you guys get in that lift, I'll get in the next.
I'll get the next one.
We're going to different floors. Metaphorically and physically.
Oh man, it actually happened to me once skiing. Do you know what I mean? I went skiing and I was trying to get, trying to get in with the teacher, so he'd help me a bit more, and he did that to me it was funny. He did it. French guy. He would put us all on the ski lift or on anything, and then he would get on one on his own on the back and have a cigarette. He did not want anyone fucking talking to him while he was in those kind of moments between slopes.
Yeah, it's a different. I think for STEM academics, it's a different life, because for literature, because I did English at uni, so like for the literature or arts-based academics, they have to have some sort of connection to
people.
Yeah, and also like culture, because they have to, and even if you're studying poetry from like the 16th century, you probably have to have some concept of how that pertains to life lived today.
Yeah.
Whereas like science, maths, technology, they don't need to give a fuck about.
No, not at all.
Human culture. Just like, I'm just solving this problem.
They they do a thing like with maths geniuses and stuff, like they'll get them butlers and they'll get them people to do everything for them. And I have heard that like some of these people are like, they're fucking used, like they don't know how to do anything for themselves because all of that is removed from them.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a trait, isn't it? That well, one of the reasons men apparently over-index on STEM is you have this tendency to be more into objects than people, and that can get pushed to like an extreme length.
The lack of empathy,
lack of empathy, like
lack of empathy and
numbers, you just like, I'm just looking at this sheet of paper and almost like I don't care if I eat or shower or whatever. I'm just engaged in the work,
absorbing the rationality. The mad thing about maths, like top mathematicians, they peak at around about 19, 20, 21.
Yeah. What do you know? What
mad, isn't it?
Yeah, because like writers and painters, apparently the equivalent peak for a writer is around like 60, and the equivalent peak, and the equivalent peak for a painter is around sort of 50, 45.
What's it for a comedian?
There is no peak. They can't measure the peak. It's such a low ebb. So it's like, technically, there is none.
That's good though, isn't it? 60.
Well, they reckon the thing is, apparently the neural agility required for math, those pathways, they're just at 19, 20, your brain is firing in that way, and it's more conducive to that kind of thought. Whereas with writing, lived experience, life experience allows you to produce something of more value. Like Tolkien wrote The Hobbit when he was like 63 or 64, I think. Didn't finish
Really?
didn't finish Lord of the Rings till like mid to late 60s. And then with painting, it's similar to writing, but you need the mechanical fluency. So,
oh right, yeah. So it's a bit sooner, yeah.
Yeah.
But the painting one is like, it really is a case of. I think I always say to people, I think the painting analogy is great for comedy, because it's you're learning different tricks all the time, and then when you put them all together, that's when it seems, that's when it's most awing.
Yeah. Do you think about life drawing classes for painting? Did you have any friends who did art at university, or any version of art?
Yeah, like people have gone to them.
Yeah, it's like, I always thought the first time you do a life drawing class must be, how do you get anything done?
Yeah, I don't think it's like that though.
Do you know?
I think it's very somber and sober.
I just think I'm just not sure how. Maybe it's because I don't love painting as much as someone who's doing it.
Do you know what it? No, do you know what it's like? If you've ever gone for like an STD check, or you've ever had to take your dick out in front of a medical person, like,
when they've asked for it,
yeah, like people be like, people be always worried that they'd get aroused. Like you just fucking don't, because the environment is just so sterile, and like there's no, like I've had like the full works done checks, and there's absolutely no way anything's going to happen, because just the whole environment, the whole setup is just.
I couldn't agree more. And I think for the model, that's what they'll be thinking. Just another job. I'm just here, just doing my thing. I'm talking about as one of the people painting in the class.
Well, look at it. If the class was full of people who don't paint, right?
Yeah.
And they're on a stag do, maybe.
In my head, art college is just a stag do for 4 years.
Right? You're going to go into this class. Most of them are going to be retired people who've been painting as a hobby all their life. It's just going to be, the whole vibe is going to be different. Like, I guarantee you, if you went to one of them as a painter, you'd probably be the youngest guy there. And,
which means I've got a better chance with the model.
Yeah. Now, I know people who've done the modeling too, and said it's quite you get a buzz out of it. Like, it's quite there's something very nice about doing it.
Yeah. If you've got a physically attractive body, like my
I don't think you have to have a physical. I don't think they ever have physically, what we would class as physically attractive bodies. They don't go for that. They go for ordinary looking bodies. Like, you go to art museums, you got fucking the statue of David. He's the only one with a six-pack in the museum. Like, all the women Picasso are painting, they're not what we would class as art's version of beauty is very different than fucking, I don't know, Pornhubs. Well, no, but like Hollywood art, the world of art's version of beauty is very different than Hollywood's version of beauty.
Yeah. There's a great Sam Morril joke about Pornhub.
I know. Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it? About Pornhub being body positive.
Body positive. There's a category.
I was thinking of that as I was saying it to you there.
Yeah.
And that was why I backed down.
Yeah. Such a clever angle. Did you have any more? Do you have one more story you want to talk through?
Trying to think any more stories. It's what's going on in Russia.
You had the one
Go
about
on.
the Texas Attorney General.
Oh yeah. What do you think it is?
Well, so his position is that gender reassignment surgery in childhood is child abuse.
Child abuse. That's what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do they define childhood? Is it under 18?
Okay, so I think legally childhood is under 16.
Right.
Probably under 18. In medicine, you're 12 is medicine. You're kind of an adult after you're 12.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, because you have adult doses of things, don't you? That
Yeah. Once you go of 12, but
I would-
I think legally, I think here, 16, 18. There's probably a bit of alcohol and voting. You're not an adult till you're 18, but I think legally you can move out your parents' house. I think when you're 16.
Yeah. So I think child abuse is, that's inflammatory language, but I don't think it's necessarily crazy to say an irreversible surgery being given to a minor is a bad thing, or like something that should be thought through a bit more thoroughly than just if they ask for it, they get it.
Yeah, but it's not. But this is the thing. Like, it's not a case of it's just asked for. There's assessments. There's all sorts of processes, and it's not like it's not like getting your boobs done. Like, it's not getting a breast enlargement either. There's a whole build up to having this surgery. Like,
Of course,
medication. Yeah. So there's a whole build up on it. I like. The thing, okay, the Texas thing doesn't. If you're a very religious person, I can see why you might have a bit of an issue with this, because I can see how you have an issue with all sorts of gender things because you're very religious. You know, blah blah blah, right? I tell you what, I can't understand J.K. Rowling's and Steve are not. Jesus, I was going to say are Graham Linehan, like people who are supposed to be liberal, non-religious people. I can't understand their issue with it. So my kind of feeling, I see it as a kind of a two-pronged thing. Either people, they're ignorant, so they don't understand the science. Because the reality of it is, like, to say to a 6 or 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old child that they don't know what gender they are. Like, I know the children don't know a lot, but they're not dumb enough not to know, like, their gender. If I had a child, I would expect it by the age of, I would expect it by 3 or 4 to know what fucking gender it was. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if the child knows how to piss in a toilet and take a shit, it should, like, I just think you know what gender you are. And having worked in a pharmacy, I've talked to a lot of people who've gone through this surgery, and you're just like, I knew, and you're like, how did you know? And they're like, how did you know you were a boy? Like, you just fucking know. You know who you are. Like, okay, you don't know complex things about your identity, but from a young age, you know basic enough shit about your identity.
Well, I think this is the crux of the matter. And again, let's take the word child abuse away, because that is just purposefully.
Oh yeah, that's completely wrong. Yeah.
Let's just take that element out. But the element that, if you said to me, should you put someone on hormone replacement drugs under
so the big thing is puberty blockers, so they prevent you.
So exactly,
that's the thing.
So my personal take, so for example, like my mum's charity, like a number of the kids who come to us now have some form of gender dysphoria or are going through a transitional. So you get, you like you say, you get to see it up close, you get to see actually what it means to people, and you get to see how people deal with it in the real world. And so I'm very supportive, as I think most people are, very supportive of if you're struggling with an aspect of your identity and you need to figure it out, and you need the space to figure it out, and you need support while you do that. Like, of course, absolutely. I do think I don't think it's as simple as, 1 + 1 = 2, that somebody should be put on puberty blockers, or that somebody should be making such life-altering decisions under the age of.
Yeah, but I do, like it's.
I'm not saying.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Like life-altering decisions, right? But let me give you another example, right? If you want to be a professional soccer player, you have to make decisions at a young age to go for that. And you have to make decisions that slightly move you away from traditional education to go for that. Should we stop people doing that? Like I went to school with a guy who left school at 12 to become a jockey, you know, like, so how does he know he wants to be a jockey? How do you know you want to be a footballer? Do you know what I mean? So like, if we're letting people make decisions for sport that moves them on a slightly different path.
I think the difference is, I understand what you're saying, but I think the difference is once you decide to stop being a jockey or stop playing football, then your ability to move into a different type of life, once you've made that decision, is very easy and simple, and there's a pathway for it, and you're not left with any consequences of deciding to.
Yeah, but so this is the other side. The not doing, a lot of the time, the not doing the transition is far more detrimental to the person, because they have, you know, they feel so disconnected and lost. You know what I mean? They don't feel themselves. And often there can be a depression, and there can be different things with that. So this and the sooner they do it, I think the more effective and better it would be.
And which makes complete sense. And like I say, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or necessarily a wrong. I think it just bears more consideration than maybe sort of the popular narrative gives it, I guess.
But I think I suppose we're seeing it from a too simple version. But I do think, like, okay, if you have a child has been saying from a very young age, so let's say, okay, born a boy, child saying from a very young age, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl. Family all knows that, right? The whole family, parents have accepted this is a girl. We are convinced this is a girl. Then gone to see medical. Now you've gone GP, yeah, I think it's a girl. Send on to another specialist, send to psychologist. So loads of people working in this field, blah, blah, blah. And you've got this whole pool of people who know this person intimately. And they're all, yes, this girl, right? Then you've got someone on Twitter, doesn't know this person, does not have no medical background, hasn't spent any time with this person. And then you've got a judge over here, and they're saying, no, that's bollocks. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to trust the medical people involved to be making the decisions right. Now, in all medicine, they'll get it wrong occasionally. But, you know, the NHS has a bucket of money to put aside for when things go wrong. So it's, you know, if you've got, if you need a heart transplant, child, young age, right, you're going to go and say, we tell you, right, 9 times out of 10 this is successful, 1 time out of 10 it's not successful. You're going to go. Do you know what I mean? Now, if you're the one that's not successful, then you sue. So if they get it wrong, they can sue, but like the probabilities of getting it wrong will be a lot smaller than the probabilities of getting a standard operation wrong for medical condition.
So the scenario you've just outlined, I think, is very easy to understand why that's a supportable scenario.
Yeah,
that makes complete sense. I think, and maybe this is something we're just dealing with as a society, that making that assessment as watertight and expert as you've just outlined it, and making the conviction of the child and the parent as forthright as you've just outlined it, then that feels like something that it's like you say, it's a medical decision. It's not a
medical decision, and this kind of thing where, like, I think people who don't work in health, you know, fucking can be a bit cynical and a bit unfair to like medical professionals all take their Hippocratic oath, do no harm. And it's not like there's people doing gender reassignment surgery with fucking neon lights, sending out TikTok fucking videos and YouTube videos and hiring a team of psychologists, marketers to try and gather up business and try to hoodwink people into doing the surgery. You know what I mean? There's not like some dystopic thing where like loads of people are getting tricked into doing it because some guy wants to build a fucking palace.
No, people are getting tricked into doing it, but I think there's a very real. So, for example, I was in a coffee shop the other day, and there was two mums sat down next to me, and the kid was at a local school around here in East London, and they were talking about gender dysphoria because they were like, it's become such a big thing in their primary school.
Yeah,
and they were talking about how their daughters are saying they're going through it, and how one girl at school has actually gone through the transition and now she's regretting it. And these
really,
this is like a real conversation I'm listening to, like, happening here. And these two mums were like, we think it's being discussed a bit too much in school, we think it's being brought up too much, we think that it's being offered a bit too freely, and it's coloring a little bit of how our children are, but they didn't want to vocalize that because they didn't want to be seen as transphobic.
Yeah,
because they were sort of saying that the support for people, the support for the scenario you outlined, where it's like this person would be objectively unhappier and feels like they are trapped inside the wrong body, and the longer that happens to them and the more their body develops as the wrong gender, the unhappier they're going to get. That is a very no, I'm saying I think almost everyone would be incredibly supportive of that scenario.
And the other thing you have to be careful here too, because you overheard a third party conversation in the coffee shop. So the person who had the realignment, so okay, so I mean, so you could give someone a health operation or something like that, do some operation, right? And they might have one day where they feel bad and they say, oh, I regret it. Is that now the evidence that they do regret it?
I'm with you, and I'm with you, and like I said, in the scenario you outlined, that sounds like you're do no harm. You're doing harm to not proceed with the intervention.
Not proceed, yeah.
That's
I think the big thing with it is, I think too many people have an uninformed opinion of it, and I think there's a serious lot of egotism in this debate, particularly with people like Graham Linehan and J.K. Rowling, in that I think they're very intellectual people, they're very intelligent people, they're very successful people, and they see themselves as very intelligent people, but they encounter something that they can't fully understand, they can't fully see, and instead of accepting that maybe they don't understand it, they then believe that their understanding of something is superior because of their egotism.
I think that makes sense. But that's similar to the point we were making earlier, wasn't it? About how no one wants to believe there's luck involved in their success. They'd much rather believe it was all down to their intellect, all down to their understanding of the world, all down to how they perceive things. Yeah, of course. And I think as well, I'm saying yes, and in addition, I think people conflate the two, because I think there's the medical issue of you are doing more harm to somebody to not have an intervention if they are expressing gender dysphoria to the level you were describing in your example. Then there is a separate but related issue around maybe in some more progressive pockets of the country, parents are starting to get a bit worried that not just this issue, lots of issues are being bombarded at their 5-year-old.
The problem with parents,
they're separate things.
The problem with parents is they don't get enough sleep, so they worry about fucking everything. That is the problem with parents.
Yeah.
Because I get phone calls all the time about parents, about very minor health things. And and
it's just because they're tired. Like, try not sleeping for a week. You fucking worry about everything.
That's the number one thing I have seen from my friends having kids. I don't know if you're the same. The level of happiness they have is pretty much tied to how good are they at dealing with lack of sleep. Like my brother is brilliant at dealing with no sleep. Like he can just crack on and just do it. And his wife's pretty similar. She's not quite as good as him, but he can just like do it. My sister struggles a bit more with lack of sleep, and you can really tell, and she would admit that you can really tell when she's had her 8 hours, not had.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, these days 8 hours. When she's had 2 hours versus like 5 or 6, you can really really tell.
Yeah, it is probably why I won't have kids. When I've not slept, I'm very blunt and very cutting, because I get very much into I don't want to spend any energy. So like the pleasantries all go out the window. And I'll tell you what I did once, fucking horrific. Oh Jesus. I once skipped a queue in an airport because I was tired.
Yeah.
I was flying from
What did you do?
I was flying from London to Dublin.
Yeah.
I'd been up all night, I was shattered, and I was going home for Christmas. And I was just like, I can't queue. And I just thought, fuck this. And I walked to the front of the queue, and I just walked in, stood, and waited to be the next person. This was before the internet, when you had to do the check-in. And there was a woman with 2 teenage kids, and she started tipping me on the shoulder, and I just ignored her. And she kept tipping me, and I turned around, and she said, "You're after skipping in." And I went, "So what?" And I turned around, so I went back to her again. And then she kept at me, and I turned around again, and she goes, "You're after skipping in." And I just went to her, "I know I did, but there's nothing you can do about it, so leave me alone." And then I turned around, and they called me over, and I went, without sleep, I'm a monster. I'm a horrible person. You want to see the face on her 2 teenage kids. They were just like, "I think we should leave this guy alone."
I thought you were going to say her teenage kids were like, "We can do that." I didn't know we could do that.
It was like, I couldn't. I was in such a bad place. Like, I was just shattered. I was just absolutely shattered. And
and that is where your love of Napoleon was born. You're like,
oh yeah.
wee little fella. I can just wander him wherever I like.
Wandering around. It's quite funny though, dude. Like, I could only do that if I'm in that state of mind. But like, it is quite funny doing things like that. Do you know what I mean? Because like when you start breaking social norms and stuff like that, there is fucking nothing people can do about it.
No, that is what is hilarious. Like when you see people pushing those boundaries, and you really get a live experiment of what people will do to push back. And usually it's not very much.
It's not much because you just think, well, if they're not obeying any social conventions here, like, what kind of fucking unhinged lunatic is this?
Like,
do you know what I mean?
I was in December, and I was flying from New York to Paris. Everyone's obviously, you have to be vaccinated, and the things and the tests, and everyone, lots of requirements to fly. French lady next to me in the checkout was talking to like the Delta, American lady, and the American lady was like, "You don't have your vaccine, you don't have a test, or a PCR test." And the French woman was like, "I have my lateral flow. I'm a French citizen. It's just lateral flow. That's all I need." And the woman was like, "I don't think that's right. I think you need a vaccine. I think you need a PCR." And and she's like, "No, I'm a French citizen. It's lateral flow. You don't know. You don't know France." And this woman had to get a manager, and a manager came over, and he was like, "I also think you need a PCR test." And this woman was like, this French woman was like, "No, that's incorrect." And the guy was like, he held the line up for like 20 minutes. And eventually the guy was like, "Just go. Just
let her through." Yeah.
It's like,
I go on.
No, it's that during the global pandemic, when it's supposed to be these like, stringent rules or whatever, to get around social awkwardness, this guy was just like, just go.
Just let her go, yeah. I was on a flight where someone wouldn't wear a mask. Everyone was wearing a mask. And in the end, they were just like, "Oh, fuck it. Just let's go." they asked the two people decided did they mind, and they said no. Like they were just like it's too fucking too awkward dealing with that stuff. Anyway, Tom, I need to go.
Grand. Well,
All right.
yeah, been fun. Another episode of Tom and Jack having the crack. We will see you all soon.
Speak to you.